Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. A little bit of a different video today. Yesterday, WotC announced that there's changes coming to our beloved limited format. They are changing the boosters in which we draft, both in paper and on Arena. We're getting this new thing called Play Boosters. If you haven't heard of this before, there's a whole kerfuffle online about it, and I want to take some time today to explain the situation, talk about what it means for you as a drafter, mostly digging into the strategic side of things, but I do also want to talk about why this happened. There's, I think, been some misinformation going around, some confusion, so I just want to dive into that a little bit, and of course, being limited level ups, I want to talk about how this might affect you as you draft these new sets with these new play boosters. So, what's happening is, starting with the first set of next year, this is Mysteries of Markov Manor, which is coming after Ixalan, which is the next set. We're getting these play boosters for our paper experience and for our online arena experience. And as you can see here, basically what that means is they're changing the layout of the packs a little bit. They're changing the composition of it. In a minute, I'm going to get into what I think this means for you as a player playing Draft or Sealed, but just know as we get into this, this is the big thing that's changing. They're changing the layout of the packs. And of course, this begs the question, why is this happening? Why are they changing the layout of the packs? 3 years ago, they came out with set boosters, which was their way of making it more exciting for those people that are just looking to crack packs, basically. Not as limited players. Folks that just buy packs because they want to open cool rares. In these set boosters, you generally see a few more rares on average. You see a few more uncommons, maybe a few more foils, a few of those cards with like the cool treatments, but they cost more, right? It's for the people that kind of want those kind of cards. But for us, we were just drafting with draft boosters, and that's kind of how it was. The problem with that was that it caused such a shift in people buying these set boosters, because those are the ones that really people wanted to open their cool cards in, that draft boosters had not been selling. Not at the rate they were hoping that they would sell. So they have these two products that are kind of similar, but one of them just isn't pulling its weight. And of course, it's still very relevant to have a draftable booster, right? The thing about these set boosters, they're not draftable. The way that they're laid out, it wouldn't make for a good draft experience. They're not color balanced and they're not rarity balanced. So you need a draft booster to have a good draft experience. So we kind of run into a problem here where they want something to fulfill that draft experience, but also this is a really well-selling booster, a product they've come out with that these set boosters, they don't want to get rid of them. So what are they doing? They're basically merging them. And of course, this kind of sucks as this is a profit-driven decision, I believe. Not quite from Wizards' side. I think it's coming from higher up at Hasbro, because some of the stuff that Mark Rosewater had been saying on Twitter basically amounted to, hey, if we didn't do something, if we didn't make this change, Draft might have run into some trouble. And he actually had this tweet that was very alarming, I'm sure, to some people, but he clarified later. He said, if we didn't change anything, draft boosters were going away. This change was to save drafting other limited formats. People freaked out about that, saying like, wait, they're looking to get rid of limited. Clarified later to say that they're doing future forecasting with this. And if the market trends had continued that way, then Hasbro would have likely put some pressure on them to just say, hey, just get rid of the draft boosters. They're not selling. And again, it really does suck that this is a market-driven decision, that they felt like they had to change something, or else they just, Hasbro would say, hey, we need you to change something. So if you're a little bit upset about this decision, I think, you're well within your right to be a little bit shooken up about what's happening here. Don't direct your ire at the folks at WotC. I do really think this is a Hasbro-driven decision. And a lot of people are saying, well, this is a problem that Wizards created because they made set boosters. That's true, but once again, I think that's my read on the situation is that's Hasbro breathing down their neck saying, hey, you need to sell more. We want you to sell more of this. Put these set boosters out. That created this problem in the first place. And I think the people at Wizards, I very much trust. They love the game as much as we do. They're trying to make this the best experience that they possibly can. They don't want there to be a world where limited doesn't exist. So that's why they're making this somewhat necessary change. And here's where we get to the big downside of this announcement. Because when I first read this announcement without reading this full article, by the way, I'm going to link the article that explains all of the minutia of what's going on with these new boosters. But before I read this entire article and just saw, hey, they're changing the layouts of packs, it's going to be, some more interesting slots in there, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I like that they're experimenting. I like that they're kind of innovating. Wizards is pretty good at innovating and honestly having a good track record of their innovations. They miss here and there, but I think for the most part, when they try out something brand new, people tend to like it. But this does come at a huge cost this time, I feel. And that is that paper packs will be going up in price to meet what a set booster would be. So depends on where you live, of course, but that's, between $1 and $1.50 for like Canada and the States. And it's going to be a lot more punishing for those folks living in South America, Australia, these non-US centralized places that draft in Magic was already extremely expensive over there. I saw a tweet from somebody saying that to buy a draft pack, it's basically the same cost as 40 bus rides. And I think they're from South America. And that's just wild to me because, you know, for me in Canada, that's like a draft pack is like 2 bus rides. And the fact that they, you know, the packs are so much more expensive over there. It's just really, my heart goes out to them, truly. I do think that this is a incredible downside because, you know, some might say that, hey, Magic is already a luxury, and, you know, if you can't afford it, then, if you can afford it already, then $1 or $2 won't make much of a difference. And like that is sort of true to some degree, but everybody has their breaking point, right? There's just going to be this section of people that say, hey, I was happy with my $12 drafts, I can't do the $16 drafts, and they're just not going to want to or be able to do paper drafts anymore. So I think this is, we'll see how it plays out. I'm optimistic. I'm hoping not too many people just go, hey, I just can't draft anymore. And I have a lot of good things to say about this change, like the strategic, actual gameplay side of it. I'm actually optimistic about it. But I really want to recognize that this is a problem, and I hope that if there is a significant hit to the player base, like people just aren't going to draft, they find some solution to that. And that's, only time will tell, basically. Now, the nice thing is that the cost of a draft will not be changing on Arena. You just want to, if you're an online-only drafter, this isn't going to affect you that much. And the other thing that, like, slightly offsets this from their perspective, I'm sure not everybody's going to feel this way, but if you draft these with these boosters, you are getting more rares on average. That's one of the things, that there are more rares in these packs than in normal draft boosters. So hypothetically, it evens out over the long run, but, you know, over the long run isn't applicable when you only do 2 drafts per set or whatever. So that's the overview of things, why these play boosters are a thing in the first place, and what I do think is the biggest downside of their existence. But the question is, how does this actually affect Limited? How is it going to affect how we draft and how we play Sealed? So let's look at this pack layout here. Currently, the pack layout is 11 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare. And of course, there's variations on that. You could have a foil in paper. You could be drafting a set where there's a bonus sheet. That means you're going to have 1 fewer commons. This new pack layout makes it so things are a bit more variable. There's going to be a bit more variation in your pack. So you've got 6 guaranteed commons. You're always going to see those 6 commons. And then there's a slot 7 here, where you get either a list card or a common. Now, let's talk about what that is. So if you haven't opened a set booster before, sometimes you get these cards from the list. And the list is just a kind of this backlog of Magic history, cards that are thematic with the current set. So, you know, in Eldraine, you might get an OG Eldraine card. And these cards in paper are mostly just for people to collect them. You know, they get a Sensei's Divining Top for their commander deck, a Simian Spirit Guide for their, well, once upon a time their modern deck, but not anymore. Or you just open kind of an interesting card. In these play boosters, you're going to get a list card instead of a common 1 out of 8 times. So it's not going to be that frequent, but it's going to be quite relevant. And these are playable, these are draftable. The list is going to be different on Arena than it is going to be in paper. And I dislike this as well. This is another downside, I believe. I think that Magic is at its best, Magic drafting, when the online packs very closely mirror the paper packs, right? And the reason they are doing this is because, well, the cards that they want to get out to the commander players in paper are different than the cards they want to put on Arena, right? So they have to do something there. We're going to have to wait and see exactly how they handle it. But that's what this slot is. And I do think it's cool, by the way. I think it's cool that you get a random, oh, this card's from this random old set displaying a bit of Magic's history. I think that when I've opened set boosters before, I'm excited by that. And I have had the thought of like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to insert these in and be draftable. I know not everybody thinks that. I know a lot of people would just prefer to be straight 15, 14 cards of the set you're drafting, but I kind of like this. You can kind of think of it as like a bonus sheet that doesn't have as much thematic tying into it. That's the way I kind of think of it. Then you get your 3 uncommons, just like normal. You get your 1 rare or mythic. And then we have 2 new things here. Slot 13 and slot 14, non-foil and foil wildcard. The wildcard could be a common, uncommon, or rare from the set. It's not going to be a list card, but it's just going to be a random card from the set. And the foil wildcard is the same thing, but it's foil. So that introduces an interesting dynamic because if you're paying attention here, that means you could technically open 4 rares in 1 pack. Your non-foil wildcard slot and your foil wildcard slot could be rares. Your list card could be a rare, and your rare is obviously going to be a rare. And a lot of people's initial reaction to that is, oh my goodness, limited is just going to be all about rares. It's going to be 4 rares in a pack. It's a possibility that there are 4 rares, and there's a possibility there is 3. But more likely than not, you're going to have 1 or 2 rares. And I think we've already seen the kind of 2 rare dynamic before in past sets, in stuff like March of the Machine or stuff with bonus sheets. Any set with a bonus sheet. You've opened 2 rare packs before, and I am optimistic, and I'm not too worried about this aspect. I think this is an aspect that a lot of people are worried about. That, oh my goodness, there's going to be so many rares flying around the table now. But a few things make me not too worried about it. Number 1, they've explicitly stated, hey, we know that there will be more rares. Because I'm not arguing there won't be more rares. I'm arguing that it won't feel that much different. They've said, hey, we know there are going to be more rares in packs. We're going to account for that in our design. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but I trust those folks working on Limited. They've been working on these packs for years at this point. I have faith in that. So I'm going to reserve judgment for now on the multiple rares in a pack. I wouldn't be too scared about that. I know me saying, hey, it's going to be okay is not the most comforting thing in the world, but I do think so right now, and I'm hoping to kind of spread that feeling, because I don't think this is cause for doom and gloom. Oh no, our precious limited formats are going to go away. The people at WotC love Limited too much for them to not handle it carefully. Let me put it that way. Now, when you talk about Sealed, I think Sealed it's a little bit different, because when you think about Draft, you open... Let's just say you do open a pack with, this is the very rare situation, you open a pack with 4 rares in it. Well, those 4 rares aren't going to go to one person. The person who opens the pack's going to be able to take the best one of the bunch, pass it along, and maybe, one of the other rares is pretty good. And that's the other thing to consider, too. Even in a pack with 4 rares, think about how many rares just aren't that good in sets, right? You've got, like, lands or a weird commander card. I really don't think this is going to make the drafts feel that much more powerful. Sealed, I do worry about a little bit. But like I just mentioned, you're even if you open one of those 3 or 4 rare packs, it's not guaranteed that you're going to have good rares. You're not just going to face, people with, just 10 bomb rares in their sealed decks. We've had formats like this before. Something like Double Masters might be a good example, where I've done Double Masters sealed, and in Double Masters, you get 2 rares guaranteed. And, maybe in your pool, like, you can't play 3 of those cards. They're just not in the colors that you're in, and then 3 of those rares aren't very good. I actually think there's a world this improves sealed, because there are fewer unplayable pools, right? A lot of people are looking at this at like, oh man, I'm going to face so many opponents with so many bomb rares, and I'm not going to get those bomb rares. But I actually think it's more going to be like, hey, the draft pools are actually full with more good cards, more playable cards at least. And so, well, you're not going to just open your sealed pool and be like, oh crap, I can't. There's nothing here. And I do think 10% of sealed pools are kind of like that. The last thing I want to go deep on for this pack layout is there are fewer commons, and fewer commons mean they have to design commons a little bit differently. There are going to be less situational cards, stuff like Break the Spell from Eldraine, where that's not a card you're going to be putting in your main deck. It's a situational card, it's a sideboard card. They're going to, and they have stated this, they're going to move a lot of the situational cards, stuff like maybe Disdainful Stroke is another good example, to uncommon. Their goal with the commons is to make sure that every common is appealing in some way. Somebody at the table is going to want it, and it's not going to be some really niche card. They've also said that they're going to put more good removal at common to help balance a little bit that there will be more rares on average, right? So we're going to see exactly how that pans out. And a lot of this stuff, by the way, so much of what I'm talking about today, it's kind of speculative. I'm just kind of taking shots in the dark here because we really don't have the information until we see a set. The first set in January that actually has this implemented, we're not going to be able to really say, oh, I think this is I like how this played out, or I don't like how this played out. I'm just talking about possible futures at this point and the things that they have confirmed. So we'll see. I do think that restriction they're putting on making sure that all the commons are appealing to some people is actually quite a good one, because it means that, I actually made a tweet about this here, it means they can kind of just cut some of the junk from the packs that nobody really wanted. And that does cut out some of the strategic depth sometimes, because they'll mean there's a little bit less of the, these cards that are only good in 1 out of every 30 drafts you have, but in that 1 out of 30 is really, really good. I can't think of a great example right now. Maybe the Slitherblade deck from Amonkhet. Those kind of decks maybe will fall by the wayside a little bit with this new model. Although I don't think that's a guarantee. I think it is guaranteed, though, that they're going to need to print fewer cards like Kindled Heroism, because right now, they really have to stretch in the design process. They have to come up with 20 commons of each color for each set. And they have to make them kind of varied and make them not play like the last set. So when you get to common 20, you're like, all right, I guess we'll print like a kind of a crappy combat trick here. They're not going to have to do that as much because there's just going to be a fewer number of commons overall. I think there's going to be 80 commons in each set now, where currently there's 100 commons in each set. And the other thing I want to call out here is that, once again, I really do have a lot of faith in the people in the WotC building. They're going to be receptive to feedback. They're going to say, hey, you know what? This actually didn't work on our first outing of these new play boosters. Let's tweak things. We're going to get to a point where maybe if it is a bit of a rocky start, I do have faith that they're going to fix things in good ways. So yeah, there's definitely the possibility that the first set doesn't stick the landing. But just like I've said that they're pretty good with their innovations and making exciting things and making their innovations work, I think they also have a pretty good track record of tuning things. In Limited, by the way, Construct is a different deal, but in Limited, tuning things that didn't quite work in the previous set. 2 sets later, they're like, yeah, we actually fixed that. Last thing I want to point out is a thread on Twitter that I will also link in the description from our friendly neighborhood data scientist, Sirkovitz. And Sirkovitz mentioned that this new layout is actually very similar to March of the Machines, where in March of the Machines, you get a rare, and you'd also get a bonus sheet uncommon, right, for the Legends bonus sheet, and you'd also get an uncommon battle. But that legend sheet, that could have been a rare, and your battle, that could have been a rare too, and you'd also have your 3 uncommons. And March of the Machines was I really, really enjoyed the variety that this pack layout gave. When I did my, lessons learned episode from March of the Machines, one of the things I noted that I think people really enjoyed about this set was your drafts felt pretty different because you were seeing a wider variety of cards because you had all these different slots. And so if that's a peek into the future, and I believe that March of the Machines was probably like a trial run for them, being like, okay, let's see if this actually works. If March of the Machines is the way they're going to approach this, I have faith that this is going to work. So, in conclusion, a lot up in the air. I totally understand. Limited players kind of, Magic players don't like change in general. And especially with Limited, that, it's clear that in some regards, it's not WotC's #1 format they focus on. There's some worry that Limited's going to either fall by the wayside, or that it's not going to get the support it needs, or it's going to go all away altogether. Come at me if I'm wrong, but I'm very confident in that that's not what's happening here. The people at Wizards want Limited to succeed. There's no reason for them not to want it to succeed. So the downside, the increase in price, I don't support that. I don't like that. And I'm sure nobody does, except the folks over the shareholders at Hasbro. But from a play perspective, I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of optimism, both in their current plan and the fact that they can adjust as they go. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this in the future. Please leave any comments of your thoughts, things you agreed with, things you disagreed with. And yeah, we'll see you on a probably not as out there video next time. Bye, everybody.